Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to Infodumping with my friends, where I bring my friends over and they get to talk about whatever interests them. I gotta work on that introductory catchphrase. This today's guests, long overdue. It's about dang time I had you on, my friend.
I'm sorry.
Introduce yourself.
Hello, I am WD. I am Venus's friend, and I am here to talk about How to Train Your Dragon.
Excuse me. I'm sorry, just a little tired. It's
No, it's okay.
again, it has been long. It's been a long time since I like I'm sorry. I'm bad at this.
No, it's all good. I mean, I do just have to disclaim, my internet is really poor sometimes, so if I have to ask you to repeat things, I apologize in advance.
No problem. No problem whatsoever. So today, what are we going to be talking about?
Okay, so I cycled through a lot of topics, like a lot of topics, but I eventually settled on How to Train Your Dragon because Uh, just out of a lot of different media, I feel like How to Train Your Dragon is one of the longest that's had a huge impact on me, and it's very special.
I see. All right. Yeah. Commission info for me is on the screen. If you want me to write or voice act for you. Now then, shall we officially get started?
All right, so let's start back in 2010 when the first like movie came out. Because if you had to take How to Train Your Dragon and like divide it up into three major components, you have the books, you have the movies, and then you have the shows. I remember as a kid, I saw the trailers for How to Train Your Dragon, and looking back, it's a whole new experience than seeing it as a kid. Because looking back, if you were like an adult or like maybe like a teenager or something seeing these trailers, you probably thought, "Oh no, this is the stupidest movie I've ever seen. It looks so garbage. It's got all these really bad animated movie cliches. It's like that's totally what you would have thought from a lot of the adverts. But I mean, I think anyone who's watching who has seen How to Train Your Dragon can absolutely attest that it is anything but that. It is single-handedly my favorite DreamWorks movie, and that's saying a lot. That's going up against movies like Prince of Egypt and just like some real classics. And How to Train Your Dragon just like kind of what was interesting about it was it wasn't really like a new story, but it had a whole new like just direction on it, and it was just so like it's hard to describe. But as a kid watching it, it just kind of really resonated with me in a way that you know a lot of things really hadn't, and that only a few things up to that point really had. And I have always had this like deep seated fascination with dragons just in general too. Like I remember way before that, I really loved the movie Aragon. I apologize for fans of the book. Um, they always represented this like majesty and fantasy to me. It was like they were like the ultimate like creature. Like they could command the sky, the earth, the sea. They could breathe fire. They could breathe ice. They were literally represented the non limits of imagination and possibility. So when I watched How to Train a Dragon, I just kind of like it just really like resonated deep with me, and it was a world that I wanted to be a part of, that I wanted to explore, that I wanted to actually like be in. So I immediately got hooked. I was like obsessed over it. I got the movie and the game for Christmas, and for like the next year or so, I mean, all I had was that movie. So I was like, I just watched it over and over and over again. Um, And then, like, about a year later, I think is when they started airing the first season of the TV show on, I think it was Cartoon Network at first, and then, like, way later they moved it to Netflix. Um, and I was just, like, really excited because it was this chance to see more of this world that I had just absolutely fallen in love with, to see more of the characters that I'd grown really attached to like to find more. But I think always what was the singular most exciting thing to me as a kid watching the TV show was that they would introduce new dragon species, and at the heart of it, that is what. Like, and don't get me wrong, I love everything else about it. The animation is, even for the TV shows, like it's pretty good animation for like straight to TV for a TV show. And like, but and I love the characters, I love the story, I love the themes, but like at the end of the day, the dragons are really like what connected me to it. They were all so unique, and they all had different personalities, they all had different habits. In the TV show, they would say things like, "Oh, these dragons migrate to this island at this certain time, and we have to find a way to direct them away from our island on the way." And it's little things like that that just like really like it really like inspires my own sense of world building. It's like it's those little touches that like they didn't have to put it in there, but they did to simply just to build on the larger world around it. And a few years passed by. I think 2 seasons of the TV show came out before we got a trailer for the second movie. And as soon as I saw that second trailer, I was like pumped into it. I was like, because the trailers for the second movie were so much better than the ones for the first movie. I think overall the first movie is better than the second movie, but the trailers for the second movie just like absolutely blew anything else out of the water that I was even thinking about going and seeing that year. And that wasn't the only movie I was excited for, but like it like and I think 13 by that time, yeah, because it came out in the summer of 2014. And I was only 9 when the first movie came out, so a good amount of time.
Oh my
And
gosh, you are a baby.
yeah, I was baby. I was
I was like,
baby when the first movie came out.
I was 15 when the first film came out. Then you said, "Oh, I was 9." I'm thinking, child.
Yeah, no, nope. I was a wee little lad when the first movie came out, and I mean, technically, I still was when the second one came out. When you think about it, I mean, 13 is not really all that old. It's like, oh, I'm a teenager now, and it's like, nah, you're still a preteen. You just don't have to label it.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, and then I saw the trailer for the second one, and like I was just as enthralled as I was when I was a little kid. And it was just like, and I think it was around this time that I started learning about the books, and like looking up the audiobooks on YouTube and just listening to them. And like, first of all, David Tennant narrates the audiobooks, and it is just fantastic. I can't I can't commend it enough. Like, he does such a good job narrating the books. Um, so yeah, while I was waiting for the second movie to come out, I started, researching the books, and I started finding out that there was other stuff to this than just the movie and the TV show. And I even started looking up clips of the live spectacular that apparently had been going around for a few years. That didn't really look amazing, but I gotta commend them for the stunts. There's a lot of like high wire stuff going on, so I gotta give them commend for that. But that didn't really particularly interest me. But I did start listening to the audiobooks because I didn't have like the physical books for me to actually read. Um, and just finding out there was this whole other side to How to Train Your Dragon, just like it blew my mind. It's kind of like as a kid, you go and see, you go maybe like I don't know, like Transformers, and then you find out after you see that movie that there's a whole like 5 TV shows that came out before it. It was like, oh wow, there's more to this. So like obviously I got really caught up in the books, and I found out about all these dragons that are in the books that aren't in the movies, and then the movies that have dragons that aren't in the books. And I was like, so by the time came that I finally got to see the second movie, because unfortunately I didn't get a chance to go see it in theaters. Um, I just remember I was just like on the lookout for like characters and dragons that were in the books that weren't in the movies. That I was just like, oh wow, I wonder I wonder if maybe I wonder if like a Razor Wing is going to show up in this movie or something. And like, I don't think there was too much of that, but there were a lot of new dragons. And again, that was just like what drew me in. That was like the most exciting thing to me, was just like the new dragons, just seeing their new abilities. Like, what did they look like? What could they do? After I saw the movie, I started looking up all the new dragons, and I found out about the Hobble Grunt, the Snafflefang. By the way, I love the dragon names in these movies, because
Aw.
even after the whole like reveal that the dragons aren't like evil or like attacking them just out of malice, they still give them names like Snafflefang, Rain Wing. They give them like these, like these awesome names, like just what's the one in the third film? They call it a Crimson Gore Gutter, and I'm just like, such a violent name for what is ultimately a very gentle animal. And then the second, yeah, so I saw the second movie, and then I found out, and then this was about the time that I was getting like, you know, I was downloading a lot of mobile games on my phone, and I was like, really into like all these resource building games, and I found this one called Rise of Berk, and I was like, what is this? And it was a resource building game centered all around How to Train Your Dragon. You got your own dragons, you could nickname them, you helped them grow, you fed them, you sent them to like get fish and wood and stuff. And I mean, like, honestly, on the surface, probably not that fun of a game for people who aren't absolutely into How to Train Your Dragon, but I ate it up. It was just another thing for me to like basically live out this fantasy of being able to tame dragons and ride them through the sky. And it's just like, it was just like a really, like, even on like just a stupid little phone, it was just so engaging and fascinating. And I just like, I remember I even like made lists of all of the dragons that I had on the game and like what their names were. I came up with like little personalities for them. I was like, well, this one likes, this one doesn't really like fish. He likes meat. And I was like, and this one is a little grumpy, but I sent him to do work. And I know that sounds really lame, and it probably was, but I don't know. It felt really good to like take this thing that was giving me so much happiness and kind of build on it more and be like, well, this is my dragon. This change wing is named, I gave them over dramatic names.
Go
Like
ahead, take your time.
I was like, what is it? The change wing I had that was like called a melting wing. I named it Bitter Wing, and I said she was a female, and I said she is really grumpy but can be really affectionate. And it's like, and just to be clear, there weren't any like actions in the games that like let the dragons do things like that. Like, there were no mini games you could like play with them or anything like that. It was just like a mobile app. But I didn't really need that, to be honest. I was more than happy to just basically imagine it in my mind and then see it in my mind. Um, and then I just got really into Rise of Berg, and I started collecting all of the dragons that I could. And I was like, at one point, I even saved up a little bit so I could buy like a premium pack and get a premium dragon. If I remember correctly, it was a Fireworm Queen, which is like this almost like bee like dragon with this hive structure. And I started keeping a book, and I was like writing down all the dragons, and I was like making, and I was even like making, to the point of like making theories. Like, I was like, well, this dragon's really similar to this dragon, so maybe they like were close, maybe they were like the same dragon at one point, and they just kind of diverged or something. I was like, maybe they're really closely related or something. And I didn't have too many of those, but there was enough in the world that you can construct ideas like that. And I just like, I think 5 years between the second and third movie, and that opened the opportunity for this little show on Netflix called Race to the Edge. Now, Race to the Edge was basically a continuation of the Cartoon Network show. It had 6 seasons, and if I remember correctly, I think it was like 13 episodes a season or something like that. But the difference between the two was, first of all, there was a bit of an animation upgrade. It still wasn't like movie quality, but it was better than what had been on the Cartoon Network show, which itself had already been like not really that bad, all things considered, for like a Cartoon Network spinoff of a DreamWorks movie, which infamously do not usually produce very good TV shows. But the How to Train Your Dragon one was good. Race to the Edge. The main difference though was Race to the Edge had much more of a plot to it. The Cartoon Network show had more or less just kind of been like, oh, we're adjusting to having the dragons on the island now. We've got to like, we've got to figure out how to get this all under control. With occasional villains that would like show up and be like, oh, hey, we're gonna do this thing, and like occasional reoccurring. Um, the Netflix show though immediately had a different approach to it, which is that in the very first episode, it's like I think it's like 3 years. It's supposed to be set like 3 years, I think, after the first movie. And Hiccup is starting to get like concerned because all of his friends are kind of moving on with their own lives, and he's like he can't really find as much time for them. And Stoic is starting to pressure him to become the chief of the village, and he's like, "Oh, I don't really know if I'm ready to have to do that yet." He's like, "I kind of still want to go around and explore." So he, uh, I don't remember exactly how this circumstance arises, but he basically comes to a ship graveyard and he finds like this little contraption in it that he later calls the Dragon Eye. And when you blast dragon fire through it, it shows you like these slides, and they give you new information on these islands, these dragon species, and like all these different things. He doesn't know who made it. He doesn't know where it came from. He doesn't know why this particular ship was in the ship graveyard. There was something about it that they noted was different from the other one. And immediately there's like a mystery element to it. He's like, okay, so we've got to go to this place that it shows us in this thing if we want to figure out what it is, where it came from. And it was really like, and I think that show was what made it so unique was that most of it is actually set away from the main island where the movies take place, which is Burke. And it's mostly set on this place that they later call the Edge, and it's all about them like learning to live on their own. And it was really like the first, if I remember, as long as I'm not forgetting anything, I think it was like the first thing I ever watched that like gave me a taste of independence. And I know that sounds really weird, but just like look at it from my perspective. I think I was still 14. I think I just turned 14 when the first season of Race to the Edge came out, because I know it came out not too long after the first or after the second movie. And I was not really like doing much to get out of my parents' revenge. I mean, I was only 14. I was looking at houses trying to figure out, oh, which one can I afford? But this was the first show where like it was about characters growing up and starting to move out of the shelters that they had been in under their whole lives, finding their own problems and figuring out their own solutions. And it was like it was so weirdly well done, even though it was Vikings with dragons, which does not immediately scream like helping kids find their independence. But it really like kind of spoke to me on that level because it was exciting. It was exciting, they had their own island, they would build their own buildings and like have their own, these like things that would happen, and it was like a whole new like it was like a whole new thing from from a franchise that I had already been intimately familiar with and that I loved very deeply and that meant a lot to me. Um, and it was like, and it was just something like new, and it was like, and there were still new dragons, and like the exciting thing was that they actually started to take some influence from the books when it came to this TV show. Like, I don't think there were any direct dragons from the books that they adapted into the show, at least if I'm not remembering correctly. But they did take a lot of influences. Like, I know at one point there's a dragon that burrows under the sand that a lot of people think is derived from one of the dragons in the later books. And for like until 2019 when the third movie came out, that was basically How to Train Your Dragon was that show. And it ran for 6 seasons total, I think. It started in 2014 or 2015 and ended in 2018 or 19. I don't remember exactly which. And it just like I don't know. It was just like a good comfort food, basically. Whenever I got home from school, I would sit on my bed and get ready to watch the next episode. When a season ended, I waited eagerly for a new season to begin. It was basically like the first show that I really like. So it was the first show that I'd ever gotten interested in watching specifically on Netflix. Um, and I remember that I think it was around 2018 that the first trailer for the third movie came out, and like I was on the fifth season of Race to the Edge, and I was getting super excited. I was like, "Oh, those are fireworms! They're bringing dragons from the show into the movies," and it was like super exciting. And then, when the third movie came out, well, before the third movie came out, there were a lot of theories that like the third movie was going to dive into why no more night periods aside from Toothless, and a lot of people were saying, "Oh, well, what if in the third movie they introduced like a snow fury?" And I was like, nah, I don't think that's gonna happen. I was like, if they did introduce another fury, wouldn't they just make it another night fury? that was the first time I ever learned to eat my words, because then the trailer for the third movie dropped, and sure enough, there was a, it wasn't a snow fury, but it was what they call it, a light fury. And it's like the idea is that it's like a different species of toothless's breed. And it was just, and I remember the third movie, by the time the third movie, I actually had my license and I had a car that I could drive to go see this movie. So I took my brother and I was like, hey, you want to go see the third How to Train Your Dragon movie? And he was like, sure. So that actually ended up being like kind of a brother thing. So we bought the tickets. We went to go see the movie, I think, on a, it definitely could not have been a school night because it wasn't until like 9, it wasn't until like 10 o'clock that the movie got over, and my parents wouldn't have let me stay out that late on a school. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, we went and saw the movie, and just to clarify, my brother is not really as big of a How to Train Your Dragon fan as I am. I think he's okay with the movies, but he's not like, he didn't like obsess over it as a kid like I did, and like, you know, um, and we went and saw the movie, and like, it was such a touching experience that I basically felt like I was watching the first movie all over again. And I know a lot of people take issue with the third movie and how it ended, and I definitely like understand those people's complaints, and I 100% understand why somebody might not like this movie. But watching it, just like, it's just I can't even like describe it. But every time I go back and watch it, it just fills my heart with this like longing, because it's like watching that movie is like saying goodbye to a friend, because it was the end of the journey, and it was basically the acceptance that it had to end. And it was just such a beautiful film in that way, and it meant a lot to me, because it was like the first major franchise, I think, that I had to say goodbye to, in the sense that, okay, this is it. No more movies, no more seasons of the show. This is where this ends. And I mean, I'd had stuff end before. Like, I mean, I read the Percy Jackson books, and eventually there was the last book. But the thing with that was is that there was always another series or some continuation of it afterwards. But this, it was like definitive. It was like they're saying goodbye. This is the last movie, and this is the end of the story. And that wasn't necessarily to say there was nothing else to the world, or that you couldn't go back and enjoy the old movies and the old TV show, but it was a journey, and the journey was over. And that just, like, to know that the dragons were like, and I don't, and oh, by the way, I should probably like preface this. I know it's been a while since the movie came out, but spoilers, just in case anyone hasn't seen the third movie.
Fair enough.
Um, just there's your warning. But like at the end of the movie, when Toothless departs and the dragons are following him, and they go to the namesake of the movie, which is the hidden world, which is basically where the dragons first came from. I was like, the dragons are leaving, and that broke my heart in a way. And it just like, because it literally felt like I was watching real dragons leave, and it was different. And it just, like, I can't ever watch that movie without getting misty eyed. It's really hard, because it just like, it reminds me of that moment when I realized it was happening. Like, and I just kind of like, and I was really impressed, just with the way that they executed it. And again, if people didn't like it, totally understand why. And there are times myself where I think I don't like it. But at the same time, it definitely was it definitely, like, it was the book closing. And I think that just kind of, um, and I mean, that wasn't ever like the first time I'd experienced it, because I mean, Gravity Falls had ended like 3 years earlier, and I was a huge fan of Gravity Falls. But this was something that I had been following for like years and years, since I was 9 years old. I followed How to Train Your Dragon for 10 years now, or near close to it, because it's just like, it was different. And I think that that's about where my personal experiences with How to Train Your Dragon ends, because I finished reading the books by that point. The last book that came out a while before that, and there were shows that came out after that, but well, we can talk about those in a minute. First, I just want to ask, do you have any thoughts, Venus, about anything I've said?
Um, all I really cool. I'm sorry.
Okay, I just don't want to. I just don't want to ramble on forever and ever, never give you a chance to say anything.
No, it's okay. Um, I mean, I am like, I know of How to Train Your Dragon. I'm not that big into the show.
No, no,
I'm
no,
sorry.
no, no, no. I totally get it. Like, honestly, I'm probably over
Film series, dang it.
it. But I mean, I do. I am like one of those people that like when I connect with something, I really connect with. Like, I'm not like I'm into stuff, and then there's other stuff that like means a lot deeper to me. Granted, it's very easy for stuff to be deeper, but How to Train Your Dragon really is one of the big ones. I'd say. Like, if you ask me to narrow like what are the top three most, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
How to Train Your Dragon would definitely be one of them. I'm not sure what the other two would be. I feel like one of them would be Prom, just because of the impact that had on me as an adult. But How to Train Your Dragon was something that I just followed for like the longest time. It really meant a lot to me. And I mean, obviously, like it wasn't all like super stuff. I don't want to make it sound like watching every episode of the show was an experience. It's like
Right.
it just really did mean a lot to me, and I really loved the world, and I loved the characters, and I loved the dragons. Like I would keep playing Rise of Berk, and I would keep writing down like, oh, this is my armor wing named Battleship, and he likes mackerel over cod, and and it was like I know that it's probably lame, but it's like that it made me happy. And it was also kind of a rock for me. A lot of stuff was like a rock for me because I did not have the easiest teenagehood, I would say, and like probably preteenhood. Um, and like things like that kind of helped me like stabilize myself and keep myself grounded and not lose myself too much to my emotions.
Right.
Um, there were TV shows that came out after the movie, but well, one of them was called Rescue Riders, and well, it was basically Paw Patrol, but with How to Train Your Dragon. And I'm not here to say that that's a bad thing.
That's
You know,
actually,
like
that sounds very cute.
honestly, like I really hated it when I first saw it, honestly. But looking back, I think I was just being immature. I think that like I forgot for a minute that How to Train Your Dragon at its core is a family product. It's meant both for kids and adults, so it makes sense that they're gonna make a kid show that's much more oriented towards younger children. And honestly, like it was cute. Like it wasn't harmful. It wasn't like I mean, obviously it wasn't my cup of tea, but it wasn't made just for me. I wasn't the only one who enjoyed it, and like this at least gave future kids like a chance to what's How to Train Your Dragon. I watched this show called Rescue Riders as a kid. What more is there to it? And then you can like show them the movies, you can show them the TV show, you can give them the books and say, here, read these books, they're really good. And that's just the progression of stuff. And like yeah, looking back, I was definitely just immature. I was like, this isn't my How to Train Your Dragon, and it's just like it was so stupid of me to be like that. And I mean, I wasn't like going to Twitter or anything and posting about it, but I was like watching the trailer and being like, this is so stupid. Why are they doing this? And then like looking back, it's like, here's it's like it's that show. It's like it's for kids, obviously. And what point do I have in getting upset at that? Really. And that's kind of my general response of nowadays too. Is like if they make like a super kid friendly version of something that I'm a fan of, it's like kind of like Teen Titans Go. I really hated that show when I first watched it because I was a huge fan of the Teen Titans as a kid. But now it's like whatever. I still have the original Teen Titans. I don't really need to waste energy being this show for existing and being
Honestly, that's
different.
my general attitude towards remakes. So long as the original still exists, don't
Right,
complain.
exactly. Like it's like I hate the Disney live action, but I try not to spend too much time like getting mad about it because it's like I have the original movies. Who cares?
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other show that came out after the third movie, this was a really recent one. I think this aired in like 2021. It's called I think it's called The Nine Realms or something like that. And when I first saw the trailer, I was like kind of interested because it was basically like, oh, it's set in modern times now. But then I realized it's supposed to be set in the same universe as the movies, and I was just like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. Now that show was not really aimed for younger kids like Rescue Riders was. That show was more meant for fans of the movies and of like Race to the Edge because they put in a lot of callbacks in it. I hesitate to use that word here. Uh, they put in like a lot of references that you're only going to get if you did watch those shows or if you at least see the movies. They bring back some of the dragons from the shows. Um, I gotta say, I'm not a fan. I don't like hate it with a passion or anything, but it makes a lot. It's just not really a well constructed show, in my opinion. It's just like it just kind of I don't know, always kind of meanders, and the animation's not really that good. I don't know. I mean, again, I don't hate it. I don't like wait for a new season to come out and then be like, this show is the worst. I can't believe this. But I will admit, I do kind of enjoy watching other people do that because it's funny to see their reactions to it. And I'm just like, yeah, that's a good criticism. Like that's good. Um, but I myself don't really watch or keep up with the show. I don't even know seasons there are. I think there's 6, maybe 7. I honestly can't be sure. I'd have to look it up later to verify. But I think that's the general story of like how I came to find How to Train Your Dragon and how it impacted me, and like how I grew up with it, and it kind of grew up with me, and I just kind of like learned some stuff from it. But like to step away from like the super like this show resonated with soul kind of thing. And overall, it really was just like a fun fantasy thing for kids. Like it's basically like if you're really into fantasy, but if you think maybe like Lord of the Rings is too intense for your kids or something like that, uh, show them How to Train Your Dragon. Like that's basically like it's basically a fantasy show. Why am I saying basically? It is. It's Vikings and dragons. That's and it's just a really fun time, and like I can't recommend them enough. And like if you never want to watch all 3 of them, totally understand that. But I definitely would recommend the very first one at least. It's just such a thrill ride, and it's such a touching story. And like the thing that I love about the TV shows is that you don't watch the TV shows to like understand certain things in the movies. But if you do watch the TV shows, your viewing of the movies is enhanced by that. Because I don't think they throw in like a ton of references from the shows and the movies, but there are like things that you can like put together, and I think there's a couple of dragons you can spot that like, oh hey, that's from the TV show. That's where they brought that in. Um, and it's just really cool, like to have that and to like be able to be like, oh, this is from that episode of Race to the Edge. Uh, and it's just like love it for that. I just How to Train Your Dragon, like both as just like a both as just like an interest and something I've been a fan of, and so something that like I've just kind of traveled with.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I remember correctly, there was another game actually that came out like right after the first season of the TV show premiered. I think it was on the Cartoon Network website. It was called Wild Skies. Um, I really enjoyed that game, but I remember I got frustrated with it because for whatever reason, when I would try to do the mini games, because this one was actually like a game, like you could fly on the dragons, you could like teach them to do things and like feed them and stuff like that. But like whenever I would try to do the mini games, the computer would just lag badly, and I wouldn't be able to complete any of the mini games to get more dragons, and I was just getting frustrated. I was just like, "What is this? What's going on?" Sadly, that game has shut down. There was another game that I was not as into, Rise of Berk, but that I was into, Dragons. It was basically Wild Skies, but like an MMO and like an actual game. You could play with other people, and like there were train all these dragons, you had eggs. Unfortunately, that game got shut down last, and I was really sad about that when I heard the news. But I did manage to take screenshots of like all the dragons that I had, so I didn't I didn't feel like I'd lost forever. I am the kind of person that like this is why I can't play digital pet games anymore. I get too attached. I'm like, no, I don't. No, stop. Um, they're really like to talk about How to Train Your Dragon because I've talked about the books, I've talked about the shows, even the that I didn't really watch. I think another thing was I mentioned that there was a live spectacular earlier. I always kind of wonder if they're ever that back. Oh, you know what? There is something to talk about that I actually have some, which is the live action remake that is apparently coming out sometime, I think next year, maybe. Um, so basically, when it comes to that movie, I have to admit, when I first heard the idea that they were making a live action version of How to Train Your Dragon, I was really like, no, I don't think I like that. Not because I was opposed to anything different, but just because like I've seen Disney's track record with that, and I gotta say, there was only one Disney live action movie that I actually kind of enjoyed, and that was the Jungle Book one. All of the others I
Yeah.
thought were pointless to exist, or I was like they didn't really do anything different, and if they did do something different, I was like, well, it's not really like good changes.
I mean, to each their own. I personally loved the Little Mermaid remake.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think I've actually seen that one yet, so I can't comment on that one. I'm mostly talking
Fair
about
enough.
which ones have I seen. I've seen Beauty and the Beast remake. I've seen the Lion King remake. I saw the Mulan remake. I didn't really enjoy any of those, to be honest. The Lady and the Tramp one, I didn't even know existed until well after it came out. I was like, they made that.
Honestly,
Um,
the Lady and the Tramp one is so freaking wholesome. You
I
should
maybe I'll
definitely
check it
watch
out
it
then.
around the Christmas season.
Okay, I'll check it out then if I ever decide to get Disney Plus for that reason. I only got it recently to watch the Percy Jackson show. I don't think I'm gonna keep it, but I know my brother has it, so maybe I'll go over to his house around Christmas and like check it out. And I also just want to clarify. I'm not trying to tell anyone what to think. I'm not saying that my opinion is the objective end all be all opinion of any of these.
Right.
This is just my thought. So I definitely wasn't excited at first, but I was like, you know what? If they're gonna make it, I'm just gonna hold out hope that they'll make it well and that it'll at least be like a good experience. At the very least, I can show support by going and seeing it. And something that kind of boosted my confidence though was that the same guy who headed the animated movies, Dean DeBlois, is also heading the live action remake. I don't know if he's directing it, like he did the animated ones. I think he might just be mainly a con. But actually, do you mind if I look that up real quick?
Go ahead.
All right, who is correct? Oh no, he actually is directing it.
Oh,
He's writing, directing, and executive producing the live action remake of How to Train Your Dragon. Okay, so that actually boosts my confidence even further. Because if anyone knows how to do How to Train Your Dragon right, it's the guy who made the first movie. And I wanna point out real quick that Cressida Cowell, I think is how you pronounce the name of the author of the book. I believe she really enjoys the movies, even though they deviate a lot from the books. The books are very different from the movies, and I don't want to spoil too much because I would definitely encourage you to read the books. But for starters, in the books, Hiccup is a lot younger. I think he's only like 12 in the books, compared to him being 15 in the first movie and 20 in the second. In the books, there is no Astrid. Fish Legs is a lot different. He's like a lot scrawnier, and like that's a big point of contention between him and the other children. Snotloud is Hiccup's cousin, and he's a villain in the books. He's like trying to get Hiccup killed so that he could be chief instead. Um, it's like really different. So I definitely trust Dean DeBlois um, to direct the live action remake like a lot better than maybe some other people would. And I know it seems weird that I'm like going all over the place with I'm talking about the books, now I'm talking about the live action remake. Oh, now I'm talking about the books again. I apologize. It's just kind of how my brain works. I just kind of bounce from place to place. I actually tried to write out a bit of a script to follow for this video, and that didn't happen. I definitely think when it comes to the live action remake, I'm waiting until the first trailer before I give any more thoughts on it, really. But I'm cautiously optimistic. We'll say that I'm not really a huge fan of the idea of like something because I'm firmly of the opinion that animation is a genre. It's not is a medium, not a genre. Sorry, I totally there.
fair.
Animation is a
You are
medium. It's not a
forgiven.
genre. And I gotta say, I love Guillermo del Toro sticking up for animation at the Oscars that one year, when he, proclaimed animation as cinema, because I 100% agree. And I don't think that I don't think that anything has to be remade into live action to be more of a movie. But with that said, I am excited to at least see what ideas they have kicking around, and um, I remember like when I first heard about the casting. It's now what I call the Percy Jackson effect, where basically uh, they announced an African American. I think she's African American woman playing Astrid, and I heard a lot of people being like, "No, that's not Astrid. That's not." And I'm like, I don't care. Like that doesn't matter to me. Like my thing is, if she can do the role justice, and if she can't, who cares? Like I don't care about any of that other stuff. It's like it's weird to me that people get so hung up on details like that. It's like, okay, yeah, it's like no, it's like don't get upset about stuff like that. It's dumb and stupid. Like I care if she can bring justice to the character. That's all that matters. Like I don't know. Sorry, that was a little bit of a mini rant. That was just me
Fair
like
enough.
getting frustrated with. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to. No, you know what? I'm just gonna say it. That's just me getting frustrated with that can't keep their opinion.
Right.
Um, and I'm not saying that everyone who doesn't like the casting is racist. By the way, I'm just saying people specifically don't like it for that reason. Maybe a little bit. Um, well, I don't know. I probably shouldn't even speak on stuff like this. Honestly, I just don't like people fighting. Is all. That's all. That's the only thing I don't like. Right? I just don't like people. I don't like people getting mad at actors getting roles, stuff like that. It's like,
Right.
but anyway, moving on from that. Honestly, sorry.
That's okay.
Moving on from that. Yeah, no, I just really, I just like, I don't like, I really don't know what else is to come from How to Train Your Dragon, honestly, because like I said, the animated movies, they're done, they're concluded, and what else is going to come after the live action remake? Like, if it does good, are they going to adapt the other two movies as well? Honestly, I was like kind of hoping for a while there that maybe they would make like a TV show or something that like more adapted the books, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
if they I don't know, like if they just like made something that was like, oh hey, this is a close adaptation of the books, and I mean I don't know, maybe they'll try that something like that with this live action movie. I mean they have Astrid in there, so pretty sure they're taking more after the animated movie books because Astrid doesn't exist in the book. But with that said, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing either. I think it could turn out well. I'm just not sure it's necessary, but I mean, nothing is technically necessary. Um, yeah, no, How to Train Your Dragon is just definitely one of those things that it's meant a lot to me, and it's just like, I'm excited to see it continuing in some way, but I will always remember seeing that third movie as like just kind of the culmination, of like my journey with it, and it was just something spectacular. Um, and I can go over the more individual elements if you like I can talk about the characters and like the dragon species that I like the most and stuff like that. All right, so there's Hiccup, which I think everybody knows. Hiccup was somebody I always like identified with a little bit, almost not really in the sense that I like saw myself in him, but in the sense that I identified with problems. Like in the first movie, the conflict behind Hiccup is that he's a bit of a scrawny kid in this village of these like big burly like muscular people that are like constantly doing these physical labors, and he can't really do any of that. And I kind of related to a little bit because I was always kind of an out of shape kid. I wasn't really ever like overweight, I think, but I definitely like lagged in the gym, and I was definitely like a little bit of a weakling and stuff like that. Um, and I always felt kind of self conscious about that. So I always kind of like liked that about Hiccup. I liked that he wasn't like he didn't have to be like super buff or muscular or anything to be like a good person.
Right.
Um, And okay, and also, I'm just gonna like, I'm just gonna straight up admit it. Um, How to Train Your Dragon is where my like shipping started, right? Because
Ah.
as a kid, I didn't care about really any of that kind of stuff. I mean, I did, but not like enough to be like, oh, I really like these characters. When I saw like Hiccup and Astrid and their chemistry, and like when it carried over to the TV show, I was just like, I like these two. It was just like, it was definitely just like one of the first times that the romantic aspect of characters actually like mattered to me. It was like I just really enjoyed seeing those two together, and I just enjoyed seeing them do stuff. Like in the TV show, they do things like they no they like they slide down a mountainside on snow with basically like their dragons, and I'm like, yeah, like that's you know that's really fun, and that's just like really sweet to watch. Um, Fish legs, I liked Fish legs more in the show than in the movie. In the movies, Fish legs is kind of like this coward. Like he kind of like, he knows stuff, but he doesn't like they usually just show him like being scared or like screaming or something. And there's nothing wrong with that. He's kind of a coward in the TV show for a while too. But in the TV show, he has a much more like a personality, and he's actually like Hiccup's best friend, which is actually accurate to the books. And they're like trading dragon information. They're like compiling what they know, and they're like making these inventions together. And it's like really. Snarlout, interestingly, may have one of the better developments of any of the characters because, not, again, more so in the show than in the movie. Um, he's kind of this brash jock who's like a jerk, and I don't think he's Hiccup's cousin in the movies like he is in the because yeah, no, that'd be kind of weird with some of the things that he says and does. But I know that like in the show, he goes from this like really confident, really like kind of a bully into this like he's still kind of a jerk, but he's not like he grows to respect the others, and it's like he learns to like follow Hiccup's lead, and he's like it's a really nice development. There's a scene I remember in the fifth season where like you remember that sand burrowing dragon I mentioned earlier. There's a point where like
Yeah.
Hiccup gets abducted by it,
Oh
and
no.
one of the characters they're with like tries to bail on him, and Snotlout grabs him and says, "Hold it, we're not leaving without that guy." And I'm like, that's such a nice development compared to like earlier in the shows. Like maybe Snotlout might have considered it or might have been more of a coward, and it was just really cool. It was like it was just really it was just really like sweet to like see that development, and like there's the twins are not very like notable in the aside from the third one, which I think Tough Nut is. I think Tough Nut's whole my thick, luscious beard, and it's just his hair tied around his chin is hilarious. That's totally something he would do. The twins are hilarious in the show, though. They're literally agents of chaos. They. I remember that in the Race to the Edge when they get to the island that they set a base at, their only requirement is there has to be something called a pit, and it's like we never see the boar pit, we never see what they do with it, we never see like why they need it, and it's like it's hilarious that they're just so insistent we gotta have a boar. And I remember that they're like total masochists too. They like constantly punch each other. It's like I remember there was a scene in the Cartoon Network show where Rough Nut punches Tough Nut, and he's like, "Harder! I want to see stars!" And then she punches him in the face as hard as she can, and that just killed me as a kid. I was just like, why? Um, but of course, and oh wait, actually, I should probably talk about Stoic and Gobber too. Stoic and Gobber,
Right.
just like the best bromance, honestly. Like I'm actually a little bit sad there's not more on-screen time of them together because when there is, you can totally just see this like forged through fire friendship that they have. And I remember one of the specific moments that made me laugh was there was an episode of the Cartoon Network show where like they were looking for like a buried treasure or something of a previous bird chief, and they follow the main characters, and they're like trying to figure out where they went, and then they see a glacier like tumble distance, and Gobber goes, "The glacier, I knew it." And Stoic's like, "Oh, you knew it, did you? Then how come we spent a week digging in the sand?" And Gobber's like, "That was your idea." It was just one of those like stupid exchanges that just made me giggle. It's such a like bromance thing to say. That was your idea, it's totally not mine. How dare you? Um, I always loved Gobber and Hiccup's relationship in the shows and the movies where like he's like an uncle figure towards Hiccup. Um makes him he helps him make like swords and stuff, and he basically teaches him how to be a blacksmith. Which, by the way, I will say, looking back, it makes absolutely no sense that Hiccup was as scrawny as he was being a blacksmith, because a blacksmith builds you. Like, you become a blacksmith, you get like a six pack and like huge arms because you have to lug around all this heavy metal. Um, at least, probably back then anyway. I don't know about now. There's probably more machinery now. But still, I loved the relationship though. It was so wholesome, and it was like when Hickam didn't always feel comfortable going to his dad, it was like he would go to Gobber, and I'm like, that's nice. You don't always like see that kind of thing in movies and TV shows. Usually it's like, the other parent, but it's like Hiccup's other parent is gone. Um, and I just remember that I just really enjoyed that aspect. I think a lot more than most people would have, just because it was nice. Also, shout out to Gobber being LGBT and How to Train Your Dragon being one of the first things that I actually know of from in my personal life, not just like in general. By the way, I'm not saying this. I'm saying that How to Train Your Dragon was one of the things I connected with that had LGBT representation. So I want to give a quick shout out to that, because Gobber is in fact gay.
Oh, cool.
Um, let's see what other characters. I'm just trying to think and make sure I'm not forgetting any characters. I don't really want to talk about characters that get introduced in sequels because I don't want to ask
Fair enough.
for anyone. Let's talk about the dragons. So, Toothless, obviously, like instantly appealed to me as a kid. And now, here's a fun fact: in the books, Toothless is not a Night Fury. There's no such thing as a Night Fury in the books. In the books, Toothless is what's known as a common or garden dragon, and it is a specific point that in the books he's often mocked because he's the smallest dragon that anyone has ever seen. And he gets his name because he has no teeth. Now in the movie, that's obviously quite different. Toothless is big enough to be ridden. He is what's called a Night Fury. One of my favorite descriptions for anything ever is what the Vikings refer to as the Night Fury, which is that they call it the unholy offspring of lightning and death itself. And I'm just like, man, that is so metal. I don't even know where to begin. Like, and it's like I actually really loved how the first movie really played up how scared of Night Furies the Vikings were. Like they were like, this one will kill you. Then there were others like I think everybody knows the like pretty common, like the pretty basic dragons of the show of the movies, which is like the Deadly Natter is Astrid's dragon, the Gronkle is Fish Lakes' dragon, the Monstrous Nightmare is Snarlout's dragon, and the Zibbleback are the Twins dragons. Which, by the way, they all have names. I think most people would probably know Stormfly is Astrid's Deadly Natter. Fish Lakes' Gronkle is named Meatlug. Snarlout's Monstrous Nightmare is named Hookfang, who also is from the only the first one. Snarlout does have a Monstrous Nightmare in the book, but it's not named Hookfang. It's a girl, and she's named Fireworm.
Okay.
Again, again in the show, there's a dragon species called the Fireworm, and that's just another one of those cool references that you only get if you consume all the books and all the shows and stuff. In the shoot, I'm trying to forget. Oh, right, and the twins' Higgins Zibblebag is named Bart Belch because I remember I really liked all those dragons, but what interested me more were the dragons we didn't see as much of. Like, I remember my favorite dragon species, Skrill, which was basically like the antithesis to the Night Fury in a way, or more like the rival, if that makes sense. It was a dragon that shot electricity. It was the fastest known dragon, I think, up to that point. It looked really cool. It sounded really cool. It was a dragon that, like the Night Fury, most of the Vikings were like really scared of. Like, I remember there's an episode where they find a Skrill frozen in ice, and they're like, Skrills can survive low temperatures, so it's probably still alive, so we can't unfreeze it. Do not unfreeze it. It absolutely destroy everything. Spoiler alert, it gets unfrozen, and then it goes on a rampage, destroying everything. I remember another dragon I really, really liked was the Flightmare. And the thing with the Flightmare was it was kind of like a boogeyman almost. It showed up like I think it was like every 10 years. They because it follows the Aurora Borealis, right?
Okay.
And the Viking, yeah, it was really cool. It would follow the Aurora Borealis because the Aurora Borealis like basically I don't remember if it revealed the plankton that it ate or if it just the plankton followed the lights, but it would follow the lights because it followed the plankton that followed the lights, and it would eat the plankton. And it was basically like this almost like ghost dragon. It had this like, real glow, and it had this like you ever see those viper fish and like they have teeth, but the teeth are almost like see through. It was one of those dragons, and like it had these like sea like it would live in the ocean, but it wasn't really like a sea dragon. It was really cool. And I just really loved the noises it made because it didn't roar like a lot of the other dragons. It made this like howling shriek, and it was just like um another dragon I really liked was the Scaldron. I think that was probably my favorite of the like sea dragons that they introduced. It was this dragon that would swallow seawater and it would boil it in its stomach, and then it would spray it out as like scalding hot water, and it was like a really defense. And then there was the Thunder Drum, which was so named because it doesn't have fire, but it does have these like supersonic blasts of sound that it can fire. Change Wings, which can turn invisible and shoot acid. The Whispering Death is probably the one that a lot of people remember if they've watched the show because it was this gigantic dragon. And it basically is like a head with a tail. And it's got all these giant sharp teeth. It has these spines all along its body that it can fling them out and do this like basically like this whirling dervish attack. It burrows underground and it's called a Whispering Death because it makes this sound that makes dragons agitated. And then later in the show, they introduced the Screaming Death, which is basically like a mutated version of the Whispering Death, and it's much larger. It fires this like Gatling gun round of fire. It also has spines that it shoots out of its body. I was trying to think of the name. And it was just like a menace. Like I remember at one point there was an episode where like the Screaming Death was like devouring islands, causing them to sink into the ocean. Because there's literally a point where they're like, shouldn't there be an island here? And they're like, yeah, but I don't see one. And then they find another island. It's just little rocks sitting up out of the ocean. And then they have to stop the Screaming Death from like devouring all the rest of the islands. And it's really like a fun idea. That's always the thing that like fascinated me the most with the dragons was the creativity. Like they've really come up with some like really cool ideas for these dragons. Like there's one called the Snap Trapper, and it has four heads, and the four heads look like Venus flytraps, and they spread out into this like tri shape, like the bottom jaw is split into two. And they say that what it would do is it would hold its mouths open and like pretend to be a plant, and then make this like the delectable aroma to lure in prey. I'm like, that's a really cool idea for a dragon. I've never seen that before.
Okay.
There's the armor wing, which like welds armor to its body as like a means of defense. Like it basically like that. I remember that was an interesting episode. Was like they come across this armor wing and it has an axe that Snotlout has to deliver to his father, who is basically always disappointed in him and doesn't care about him. And they have to get it back. And the armor wing it's kind of hard because it like takes metal and welds it to its body as a means of defense. So to counter it, they find a smaller dragon that collects metal and uses it to build its nest called Smothering Smoke Breath. And they basically goad the two into a fight, and then like that's how they get the axe off of it. Essentially, I remember there was another dragon. Oh, it's like right on the tip of my tongue. Oh, the Singe Tail. That's what it's called. There's a dragon called the Singe Tail, and it was really interesting because it didn't really have like any unique attribute to its fire, but what was interesting was it could shoot its fire out of its mouth, out of its tail, and out of gills onto the underside of its body. It was basically like no matter where you attack this thing from, it's going to be able to fire back. And that was a really interesting episode because that was one of the first dragons that they couldn't really overpower. They had to kind of just let it be.
Mm-hmm.
I remember there was an interesting dragon called a Death Song, which basically what that dragon was really beautiful. It had these like butterfly-like wings, and it used a song to lure in other dragons, and it would trap them in amber and then eat them. And that was kind of like a scary episode, honestly, because like you find the Death Song's lair, and there's like all of these dragons trapped in amber everywhere, and then there's like these pile of bones, if I remember correctly. And it was like, oh, good lord. Like, that was something I didn't mention earlier. How to Train Your Dragon, both the Cartoon Network show and the Race to the Edge show, were a little willing to push the envelope. Like they didn't like show blood or anything, but there were definitely moments where characters explicitly died, and it was like, damn. Um, it wasn't like gentle deaths either. Like I remember there was this one episode where like a character came across a changeling. It was a villain. It wasn't like one of the main characters. It was like one of the dragon hunters that they keep encountering throughout the show. And he gets cornered by a changeling, and like it lunges at him, and you're left to assume that it killed him. I remember there's another episode where a guy ran into a bush, and like hear this like bunch of growling and like him yelping in pain, and like the bush is rustling, and then like something he was carrying rolls out a second later when it stops, and I'm like, that's a Jurassic Park death right there. I'm like, that's straight up like Muldoon getting attacked by the raptor. I honestly always appreciated that though. It also wasn't willing. It didn't like talk down or talk dumb to the viewer either. That was something else that I really appreciated about both the shows. Like they didn't. They had just real problems and real issues that would come from this like situation. Like I remember the very first episode of the show revolves around Hiccup trying to find a way for the dragons to live with the Vikings and not destroy everything because they're still dragons. Like that's the idea basically. They're still animals. They're still going to do their thing, so they have to find a way to adapt to that. I remember, I think one of my favorite dragons from later on in the show that like doesn't really get a lot of like attention, but I really enjoy it, is the Sentinel Dragon. And basically, this is a bit of a long, basically a bit of a long story, but there's this place that dragons go to, as revealed later on in the show, called Vanaheim, which is obviously named after the Norse or the Norse realm. And it's basically where dragons go when they get ready to die of old age. And there are these dragons that guard it called sentinels, and they appear like statues, but then they move and they can shoot. They shoot like pyre, like fire, and then they can summon these big gusts of wind. And basically, their job is to make sure nothing leaves Vanaheim, so that nobody can be lured back to it. And I remember later on in the show, the dragon hunters actually find Vanaheim, and it's believed that they kill all the sentinels. And Hiccup is so mad that he almost kills one of the dragon hunters that they find left behind. And that was like a big whoa moment, because Hiccup up to this point is very like insistent on not using deadly force against enemies, against like, we can't be like them. Another really cool dragon was the Shellfire, which was this like huge sea dragon with horns, and it fires these like more like plasma bursts that like basically act like rockets. They like fire up in the air and then they crash land on a target. And I remember what was really cool about it was that a big part of season 4 plot is that the bad guys basically have this plan that involves a shellfire, but the main characters don't know what it is. And again, I don't want to spoil it because it's such a good thing that you don't figure out until later. Yeah, and then there are some shorts too. I forgot to mention this earlier. There are shorts that you can check out if you want. There's like Gift of the Night Fury, which is basically like a Christmas special. There's Book of Dragons, which basically like explains more about the dragons that are in the movie. There is the Homecoming, which is basically like another Christmas special that takes place between the end of the third movie and the epilogue of the third movie, essentially. Confusing, I know, but you'll understand if you watch the show. Or watch the movie, not the show.
Fair enough.
And I'm trying to remember if there's any more aside from that. There is Dawn of the Dragon Racers, but it's okay. It doesn't really like impact anything outside of itself, so you can check it out if you want. It gives a good look at the early models that they ended up using for the Netflix show, but other than that, that one's just kind of like, yeah, it's whatever. I do really recommend Book of Dragons and Gift of the Night Fury, though. Those were really touching. And the animation in those ones is good as it is in the movies, for the most part, yeah. I think that's about as much as I have to say on the franchise so far. I'm covering everything that I can without giving away too much, because I really do want to encourage anyone who watches to go read the books, watch the movies, watch the shorts, stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I almost wish I compiled some pictures of the dragons, but this was kind of a last minute decision to pick this to talk about, so I didn't really have time, and I apologize for that.
No, it's okay. I'm just glad you already let me know ahead of time so I could get the thumbnail together.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, no, I just really love How to Train Your Dragon, and it meant a lot to me, and it was just one of those things that really it just like it meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
It still means a lot to me, honestly. I need to get Rise of Berg back on my tablet because sadly I played it through Google Play, and I have an iPhone now that my company forced me to upgrade with that I didn't want. Uh, so yeah, unfortunately, I can't. I haven't been able to play Rise of Berg, so I will eventually get it back down on my tablet and try to play it from there.
Okay, I got it. Anything else you'd like to talk about? Because I have no questions.
Honestly, first of all, I just want to thank you for letting me do this. I really appreciate it. You
You're
know,
welcome.
um, I have never done anything like this, and I hope I'm doing it relatively okay. If I ever do this again, I'll probably try to be a little bit more organized next time.
You're welcome.
Um, as for How to Train Your Dragon itself, all I can really say now at this point is go check it out. Please go watch the movies, go read the books, go watch the show. Do however you're willing to engage with it. I can't recommend it enough. Even if you're like an adult, like it's still a lot of fun. It's still like something to be enjoyed. I mean, maybe it's not everyone's cup of tea, but nothing is everyone's cup of tea.
That is true, yeah.
All right, I think that about concludes my thoughts on it, though.
Alright. Thank you for coming on, and I am so sorry that it took this long to get you
No,
to get this together.
don't be sorry. It's entirely my fault. I 100% got like I remember the first time we scheduled this, I actually slept through it because I was so exhausted from the night before. I was just like dead asleep.
I felt so
Yeah.
bad because I kept pushing it back for so long.
No, it's okay. I mean, like I don't. Again, it was totally my fault, and I don't mind. I just, I'm just happy I got to be on here and do this. This is really fun. I'm
Yeah.
glad I got to talk about How to Train Your Dragon for about an hour.
You're very, very welcome. I am. I'm gonna check the chat to see if we have any questions. DJ has been talking a lot. Well, it's very welcome.
Oh, there's a live chat. I totally didn't realize that.
There is a live chat. Yes.
I totally did not realize that. I 100% apologize for my constant rambling. Then
No, it's okay. Snoutlow was kind of like the Bulk and Skull character. Really?
a little bit. I would say that maybe fits the twins a bit more, but honestly, I don't really like Bulk and Skull are the two guys from Power Rangers, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't really think any of the main characters fits them exactly, but I would have to say either Snotlout or the twins that most like them. Snotlout is the kind of like the like guy who always brags about himself, but like he's a good person, but like he lets his pride get a little too ahead of him.
Right. Another thing he said. Gobber is gay. Oh.
Gobber is gay. I remember in the second movie they kind of hint at this with him like saying there was another reason he didn't flirt with a certain character, and in the third movie he openly like flirts with a male character, and it's pretty funny because it's like he's just like, oh, what a man that is. And I'm like, yes, though Gobber is confirmed to be gay in the movies. I don't remember who exactly it was that confirmed that, but I know it was somebody who
Yeah.
they're like a top person in the franchise. So
Let's see. Thunder Drum. That another dragon, I guess?
yes, it is the Thunder Drum. That's actually Stoic's first dragon in the TV show before he gets a different dragon later on named Skull Crusher. The Thunder Drum is a sea dragon, and it has a sonic blast, and it's said to be able to kill Vikings at a close enough range. and it's really cool because it almost looks like a manta ray with like this really dark blue body and like these speckled ray spots on it. Um, and it's like, and it fires a sonic blast, right? And it basically it flattens itself when it's not using it, but then when it does use it, it like expands its body into this like funnel shape.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very cool.
And Toothless is basically a cat. Well, yeah, that's a cat.
Yeah, all of the dragons are so much like cats. There's this stuff that they use called dragon nip. It's basically garlic grass, and it acts exactly like catnip to the dragon. Notably, one of the only dragons that displayed a resistance to this was the Whispering Death, because the Whispering Death is basically a psychopath as dragon. Though that to be said, though, like the Whispering Death isn't evil or anything. None of the dragons. That's something I really appreciate too. None of the dragons are like evil. They're all just kind of animals doing their own thing, but they are intelligent still. I remember the first episode they introduced the Whispering Death is actually like it was looking for Toothless because the two had a fight before, and it was looking to like get revenge basically. But it wasn't evil. Like none of the dragons are really evil. The only exception is maybe the surprise dragon in the first movie, but even then, I wouldn't say that that dragon is evil. It's just kind of taking advantage of its size to live an easier life, which what animals do in nature.
Ooh, excuse me. Sorry, I'm just tired. Long day
No,
at the
it's all
gym.
good. I also wanted to apologize before if my remark earlier about the casting seemed insensitive or anything like that. That wasn't my intention.
No, it's
I just
okay.
don't understand when people get that upset about stuff. But I can also see. I mean, I did have someone present the argument to me the other day, and I was like, okay, I kind of understand that, but I don't like it when people like get that upset.
Right.
That was basically what I was trying to say. I didn't mean to call anyone racist or anything like that. I apologize.
But sometimes people do be racist, though.
They do sometimes, but you're not inherently racist if you don't like a cat. I apologize if I implied that.
Fair enough. And I think that's it from the chat.
Okay.
All right. It was nice having you here.
All right. Thank you.
You're very welcome, and we'll. I'm gonna be back in 3 weeks for the next info dumping session, because the next 2 weeks is gonna be back-to-back Killing School campaign. Woo!
All right. Cool. Thank you again for having me on. I would love to come back on again and talk about another topic in the future if you're willing to do that.
You're very welcome.
And I had a great time.
Yay!
All right.
Enjoy your day, and we'll see you